friends, and welcome to Share Them Smiles. I'm Alyssa, and today I'm going to be doing an Upon First Listen album review for the band HAIM's new album. Now, I've always referred to them as HAIM, but I've recently heard some people refer to them as HAIM, so I don't know if I'm saying that wrong. If I am, please feel free to correct me down in the comments below. But either way, they are a band that consist of 3 sisters, and they put out an album this weekend called Something to Tell You. So without further ado, let's jump right into the review. The first song on the album is called Want You Back. The first line on the entire album is purely voice, and then the instruments kick in right after that. And I thought that that was really a very interesting choice, a very bold choice for an album opener. However, I felt like it really worked. And this song overall is actually a very strong opener. It's super catchy, and it made me feel like moving and dancing along right away, which is always a good sign because it makes me more excited to hear what's going to come afterwards. The second song on the album is called Nothing's Wrong, and I really liked this song too. At this point in the album, I was starting to think a little bit of one of my personal favorite bands, Tegan and Sara. Their sound kind of goes along with it. Now, they don't sound exactly the same because they are 2 bands who have their own distinct sound. However, I would definitely put them in maybe the same playlist because they both have kind of the 80s inspired sound. So it's like they kind of have the 80s sound but with their own personal modern twist to it, which I really enjoy both in Tegan and Sara, and I'm really enjoying at this point in HAIM. And I can totally get behind that sound here on out as well. The third song on the album is called Little of Your Love. Now, right after thinking about the 80s in the last one, this song feels inspired by maybe a different decade, more 50s or 60s. I definitely imagine more of the poodle skirts and waitresses on roller skates, you know, and that kind of fun stuff, and jukeboxes and all that. And it's a kind of a fun overall feel with that, more of the 50s, but I enjoyed it. It was a fun song. The fourth song on the album is called Ready For You. There's a cool vibe and feel that's set very early on in this song, and I really liked the percussive feel, especially in what was accompanying the verses. They definitely, you can tell that there's a very strong percussive background in their music because it plays a large part in a lot of their songs, both in the instrumentation but also in the vocalization and the way that they sing as well. But for this one in particular, that stood out to me, and also it kicks it up at the chorus, but this is a really cool song that I really enjoyed. The fifth song on the album is called Something to Tell You. This is the title track, which means that this one, more than any other song on the album, should most encompass everything that they're trying to say with the album. And I really enjoyed this song. However, I felt like, speaking of the percussiveness of the vocals, at times within this one, yes, it was percussive, but it almost felt choppy, and it didn't really do anything for me. And at some points, not throughout the whole song, but there were a couple times where it even kind of took away from the song for me, and I really enjoyed this song, but there were just times where their percussive vocal styling just didn't really seem to work with it for me personally, but that's just my opinion. So the sixth song on the album is called You Never Knew, and there is the slightest tinge of like a country or rock inspiration behind this one that isn't necessarily present in the other ones. It has a more mellow feel, and I thought it showed off their musical stylings and range pretty well. The seventh song on the album was called Kept Me Crying, and this one is very bass and percussion driven, and it stood out to me as different and had kind of a cool sound. They definitely were kind of experimenting more with like a grungy or like distorted sound effects at some points within this one, which is why it stood out. The eighth song on the album was called Found in Silence, and there's an interesting start to this one, and there's also what stuck out to me about this one is I feel like there was more going on in the accompaniment in this one than there were in the past ones. Yeah, so that's that song. Song number 9 is called Walking Away, and again, there's a very cool vibe within this one, and they use kind of a whispering vocal style in the chorus, and I actually really loved this one. This one's probably one of my favorite songs on the album. Song number 10 is called Right Now. This song had a slower feel to it, and it also felt a little bit more experimental, than what came before. And when I was trying to think of the best way to describe this song, the words that kind of popped into my head were subdued epicness. I don't know if that's really anything that would make sense to you. Maybe you'll have to listen to it and kind of come to your own conclusions. But to me, that just felt like it best described what this song was to me. It wasn't epic in terms of like being this huge bombastic piece, but it still kind of had that epicness to it, even in its subtlety, and it was more subdued. So subdued epicness. You probably think I'm crazy, but that's okay too. And song number 11 on the album is called Night So Long, and this is definitely a slower, more reflective closer, and I personally really loved like the harmonization and stuff that came in throughout this one. So overall, I would give this song a 3.5 out of 5 smiles. I thought it was definitely a solid sophomore album, and it felt like a visit from an old friend. They definitely stayed true to their sound, they were true to who they are, and that's always appreciated. And it was refreshingly simplistic. It didn't feel over the top. It didn't feel like they were really trying to go anywhere or be anything that they weren't. And I really enjoyed that. However, it was somewhat lacking, I felt, in standout moments. There wasn't a lot to me that made me feel like, ugh, I need to own this. I need to listen to this 100 times. But I would definitely love to listen to it again. However, there just wasn't those moments to me that made me go, wow. There really wasn't any of that throughout the album. I really enjoyed everything. There wasn't anything that I hated or anything. There was just never anything that took it to that next level, I felt. And I really did enjoy it, and I also was thinking that I would really love to have this one on like a record, on vinyl. I feel like there is something about their sound specifically that would translate really well to that medium. So those are my thoughts on Something to Tell You by HAIM. Have you listened to it yet? If you have, feel free to comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you liked this video in particular, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're curious to see any future videos I might be putting out, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you all, and as always, don't forget to share them smiles. Ciao for now.